Sangye Chirdak Soki Chognam La Jangcho Bardu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chernyengi Pesonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupar Shuk Sangye Chirdak Soki Chognam La Jangcho Bardu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chernyengi Pesonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupar Shuk Sangye Chirdak Soki Chognam La Jangcho Bardu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chernyengi Pesonam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupasho.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So let's just
Good morning, Nick. Good morning.
Let's start with a couple of minutes meditation on the breath, please. So please think, the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. Reaching enlightenment depends on following, accomplishing the entire path to enlightenment. And that comes through study, meditation, study and meditation. Therefore, I'm going to this morning study this important text by Padampa Sangye, 100 verses of advice to the people of Tingri, in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So, like that, we just reaffirm our bodhicitta motivation that we established in the prayers. So just meditating on the breath, I think probably most of you know, all of you probably know, the posture that we sit in is the Vairocana, or Vairocana, one of the heads of the five Buddha families, Vairocana. The great translator Mapa, who was guru of Milarepa, said, there are yogis and meditators all over Tibet, but nobody's meditation posture is better than mine. So, so you sit cross-legged in the full lotus position or half lotus, right leg in front of. These aren't my legs. Right leg in front of the left, or if you can't sit in the full lotus position, do the half lotus, or just simple cross-legged position. Although if you do that, sometimes it presses on your sciatic nerve or get tingling in your legs. Or if you can't sit on a cushion, you're sitting on a chair, you should have your feet flat on the floor. Or if they don't reach, mine usually don't, then you can put a cushion under your feet. And so you're still using a meditation cushion. So then you keep your back straight. That's important. And for that reason, we put a little small cushion underneath our backside just to help keep the back straight. Then the shoulders should be level, and the arms are rounded and held out a little away from your sides, and your hands right on top of the left, tips of your thumbs touching. So, you see a Buddha sitting like that. And your neck is just slightly bent forward. So it's not straight. If your neck's too far down, tend to go to sleep. And if it's back too far, it makes it easier to get distracted. So then your eyes are lightly closed or even slightly open, if you can manage that. Rinpoche used to say if the eyes are slightly open, it's good because it lets a little light into your mind somehow. And then your lips are lightly closed, your lower jaw is relaxed, and the tip of your tongue rests against your front of your hard palate, behind your top teeth. Anyway, so that's just a reminder of meditation posture. Okay, so let's have a look at what is it today? Verse 11. So last time we were talking about, equanimity and generating bodhicitta, so all sentient beings being our mother. I don't know. There's actually a second line there, which I'm not sure, I don't think I went into, but it says, people of Tingri don't relate, verse 10, as parents, all beings in the six realms have cared for you. We talked a bit about that. Then he said, people of Tingri, don't relate to them with your ideas of I and mine. So it was, I think, Chandrakirti said, when there's the feeling of self, I, that automatically produces other than self. So there's this dualism right immediately comes in, and all the suffering arises from this discrimination between self and others. So we all have this. All sentient beings have an innate wish for happiness and the avoidance of suffering. So that, coupled with this sense of I, brings forth the idea of my happiness. So then when we come into contact with sense objects, whether it's other people or food or sound or tastes or touches or smells, we find some of these contacts pleasant, makes us happy. So not understanding how, the role of karma in the experience of happiness and suffering, we assume that this feeling of happiness comes from the object, whether it's the other person or whatever the sense object is. So then we think, oh, this, whatever it is, makes me happy. So then we get attached to that. So the nature of attachment is that it wants to sink into the object of attachment. And when attachment sinks into the object, it's very hard to separate. Like if you put oil on paper, very hard to get the oil out of the paper. So attachment is like that. It sinks into the object. And that's because, we've created the karma in this life or in previous lives to experience happiness in contact with that particular object. But, we don't see that. We think, we're so kind of externally oriented that, we think the happiness is due to the object. So then when something, so the ignorance of the self and ignorance of karma causes attachment to arise. And then when something happens to thwart our attachment, whether somebody takes the object away or if it's another person, the person does something that we don't like, then then anger arises. Or, different degrees of anger, irritation, annoyance, screaming rage. There's a whole variety of angry feelings we can have. So that's kind of the evolution of the three poisons: ignorance, which of course we're born with, and the innate ignorance, and then attachment and aversion. So when we act under the influence of those, when we're motivated, where our actions of body, speech, mind are motivated by those delusions, the ignorance, attachment, aversion, then that leaves a negative imprint on our consciousness, like planting a seed in the ground, and then at a certain point later, when the conditions are right, those seeds will ripen into the experience of suffering, as negative seeds. So, in the context of seeing all sentient beings as our parents, as Padampa Sangye says there. We discriminate all sentient beings as friend, enemy, or stranger. So I'm not going to go into the equanimity meditation, but we do that in order to equalize all sentient beings in our mind. That if we remember that all sentient beings have been everything to us since beginningless time, then the current labeling of this person as a friend, this person as enemy, most other sentient beings are strangers, got nothing to do with us, is wrong. It's just very narrowly based in temporal. It's very temporal. And if we have to open our mind to the vastness of beginningless time, we see that each sentient being has been everything to us equally. So the discrimination of some is close, some is hated, some is irrelevant, those discriminations are incorrect. So on that basis, then we practice the meditation for developing bodhicitta, the 6 causes and 1 effect. So, seeing all sentient beings mother, remembering the mother's kindness, wishing to repay the mother's kindness, generating great love for all sentient beings, generating compassion for sentient beings, generating the extraordinary attitude of taking personal responsibility to repay the kindness of sentient beings in the highest possible way by leading them to enlightenment. And then that leads to the effect, those 6 causes lead to the effect of generating bodhicitta, the determination to reach enlightenment for the sole purpose of enlightening all sentient beings. So anyway, that was all sort of alluded to in the previous verse. So verse 11, the day you were born, your death began approaching. People of Tingri, remember, there is never any time to spare. I'll just read Dilpa Khyentse Rinpoche's commentary on that verse. The birth of a baby is considered the most joyful of events, yet nothing can halt that child's relentless course toward death. So, we call it living, but actually we're dying from the moment we're conceived, really. From the moment we're conceived. Which is, when the father's sperm combines with the mother's egg, and then consciousness enters those products of conception from previous life. And that's, from that moment, we're actually getting closer to death, even though we haven't been born yet. Whatever different directions he or she may take during life, there's no way to be spared from death. The proverb says, as the sun goes further in its course, the shadows of the western mountains draw ever closer. So too, as life unfolds its course, is death forever drawing nearer. The child growing into adolescence still thinks that there's plenty of time. What a mistake. It is senseless to constantly put things off until later. The hour of death can strike at any moment. Each breath is one more movement towards death, just like the steps of an animal being led to slaughterhouse. Your present life is just one life. Future lives are innumerable. Do not sacrifice so many lives just to pursue the illusory well-being of this present one. If you neglect to practice Dharma day after day, you'll regret it bitterly, but too late at the moment of death. Can a dying person begin to practice? Right now is the time to devote yourself to spiritual practice. the experience that that practice will bring you is the only thing that will help you at the hour of death. So if we remember the Lamrim outline, there's devotion to the Guru, and then once having become devoted to the Guru, we then go on to remember the perfect human rebirth with the 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses, and then how it's useful, how it's meaningful. We can use it to create happiness in this life. We create liberation. We can use it to create the cause of enlightenment, and it's useful every moment. As commentary says, every moment if we can use every moment of our life to be generating bodhicitta, we're really accelerating our path to enlightenment. So that's kind of the whole point of Mahayana teachings. We should try and generate bodhicitta, do everything we do with bodhicitta. And then, there are teachings, meditation on how it would be difficult to find another perfect human rebirth because the cause is difficult to create. And then there are a number of examples like the blind turtle, or like throwing, rice grains against a mirror, and just thinking of how many insects there are in the world that we can see and how few human beings there are by comparison. So all these different ways of trying to bring home to us the rarity and the preciousness of the perfect human rebirth. So then after that, so that's all encouraging us to extract the essence from the perfect human rebirth. And how we extract the essence, then there's these 3 levels of the path of the practitioner of least capability, whose goal is to not be reborn in the lower realms. There's the path of the practitioner of intermediate capability, whose goal is to attain liberation from the beginningless cyclic existence. And then there's the path of the practitioner of greatest capability, that's us, whose goal is to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So in order to, so we practice the highest path, whose goal is enlightenment, on the basis of the previous 2. So that's those first 2 the first one is sometimes expressed as, I said the path of the practitioner of least capability. It's sometimes expressed as the path traveled in common with the practitioner of least capability. And then the second one is the path traveled in common with the practitioner of intermediate capability. And then there's the path of greatest capability. So it shows that in order to go all the way to enlightenment and to really practice the highest of the 3 paths, we have to accomplish the first 2. So where we're on now, the path, once we've fully understood and ideally realized the teachings on perfect human rebirth, and we determine to extract the essence from it, then the next meditations we do are from this path in common with the practitioner of least capability. And so the next meditation is remembering that even though we've received a perfect human rebirth, it doesn't last long and we're definitely going to die. So then the teachings and meditations on death come. And, most beings fear death itself, but what's more to fear is what comes after death if we haven't practiced properly. And so that's in the Lamrim, then the teachings come on the three lower realms. The hell realms, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realms. So, when we study Lamrim teachings, the texts usually go into quite a lot of detail on the three lower realms in order to induce fear of being born in those terrible places where not only is there the greatest suffering, but there's also the, as we already covered in the Perfect Human Rebirth meditations, there's no opportunity to practice Dharma in those three lower realms. All we can do is suffer, incredible pain and other sufferings. So a lot of people will say that fear is bad. Any kind of fear is bad. Fear is useless. Fear is stupid. That's wrong. There's positive fear and there's negative fear. So negative fear is useless, but fearing things that don't exist or fearing things for the wrong reason. But positive fear is what leads us to practice Dharma. So, having studied and meditated on the three lower realms and having, worked up a healthy, positive fear, then we're led to ask ourselves, what can I do? How can I save myself from these sufferings of the lower realms in particular? So that leads us to look for an object of refuge. So then come teachings on refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And then having so there are two causes for taking refuge. There's fear of suffering, and in the Mahayana, the fear of suffering is extended not just to the fear of our own suffering, but fear of other sentient beings suffering. So that's taking refuge for the sake of sentient beings, already keeping our eye on the ultimate goal of enlightenment. So we take refuge, in order to reach enlightenment, to save other sentient beings from suffering, not just ourselves. So there are, the two causes of taking refuge. One is fear, sort of pushing us from behind, and the other is faith and confidence in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha to be able to save us and all sentient beings from those terrible sufferings. So it's kind of pulling us from the front. So two causes of refuge, and then having taken refuge, as it says, Buddha doesn't relieve our suffering by hand, like pulling out a thorn, or by sprinkling us with holy water, or by transplanting his realizations into our mind. The only way the way the Buddha helps is by showing us the path. So then so refuge is kind of called the door to the path. And taking refuge is one of the ways we define becoming a Buddhist. So, you know, the other way is by accepting the basic Buddhist tenets that, you know, life is suffering, all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, all phenomena are empty, and nirvana is liberation, is true peace. So Buddha leads us by showing the path, then it's up to us. So our basic practice then is to follow karma. So the main teachings in the path of the practitioner of least capability are impermanence and death, 3 lower realms, refuge and karma. So once we've got over all that, then we enter the next path, which goes into the sufferings of the upper realms, human suffering, God realm suffering, so that even if we're not reborn in the lower realms, we're still not out of suffering, and we're still in danger of, even if we get reborn in the upper realms, like this time, we're still in danger of, in the next life, in future lives, of falling to the lower realms, and of course remaining there for a long, long time. So there's the teachings on the 12 links. Is that Geshe teaching that at the moment? 12 links and the 4 noble truths and, you know, 3 higher trainings and all that, just the teachings that we need in order to attain liberation. But then we think, well, liberation, just freeing myself from cyclic existence isn't enough. The only way I can do that is by relying on the kindness of others in many different ways. And it would be very selfish and cruel just to free myself from suffering and forget about the other sentient beings. So then we have to develop our compassion that arises for the suffering of other sentient beings. So then we, you know, do the equanimity meditation and these different other meditations for generating bodhicitta. And then with bodhicitta, we study and practice the teachings on emptiness. And then if we're really in a hurry to get enlightenment, then we study and practice the Vajrayana teachings, you know, the quick path to enlightenment. However, at the moment, we're back, according to this verse, we're back at the beginning. So the meditation on death. So in the Lam Rim, there are the first teachings and meditations we do are on the shortcomings of not remembering death and the advantages of remembering death. So there are 6 of each. So the first shortcoming of not remembering death is that we won't remember the Dharma. So we just go about our busy lives, doing what we do, working, you know, all the family activities, all different things people do, entertainment, all that, and we won't really give death a thought. As Lama Tsongkhapa said, you know, the worst thought or feeling, really, it's not even conscious, is the idea that when we wake up in the morning, is the idea that I'm not going to die today. If we don't remember death and its imminence, then we won't really practice Dharma. Then the second disadvantage of not remembering death, and you know, and the way to remember death comes in a moment. We'll remember the Dharma, but we won't practice it. So that's you know, we postpone the practice. We remember the Dharma, but we think, well, I don't really have time to do much today. I have this, I have to go to work, I have to do this, I have to do that. You know, tonight I have these plans, you know. So that's actually one of the three kinds of laziness. You know, the laziness of being attached to worldly activities, the laziness of procrastination. That's really what this is. You know, just putting it off. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it, you know, next week. I'm going to do a retreat next year. And until then, I just do whatever I do. And the third laziness is the, what do they call it? Delusions of incapability. Oh, this is too hard. I'll never realize emptiness. No point even studying it, you know, I won't. It's too hard, you know, or, you know, it's too hard to take precepts, and because I won't take them because, you know, if I take them, I'll break them. So, and that just creates more negative karma. So better I don't take precepts. Don't make these different levels of vows. So the point of taking precepts is to be aware when we break them. If we wait until we're never going to break the precepts to take them, we don't need to take them. The point of the precepts is to get to the point where you don't break them. And the only way we do that is by taking them. And then when we break them, it helps us realize, oh, I did this negative action. I did that negative action. So then, you know, if we're practicing correctly, then we'll try and purify that right away. You remember, did I mention this already? I have. The Atisha, you know, he always, you know, I've taught this, right? You know, if you look at the statue of Atisha at the center, I don't think we have one. He's depicted as having a little stūpa beside him. So whenever he traveled, he always traveled with this little stūpa. And he said he was a monk, a fully ordained monk, Gelong. So he said, you know, I never break my Gelong vows, and I rarely break my Bodhisattva vows. So there are three levels of vows, you know, but I break my tantric vows like rain falling. So whenever he was traveling, excuse me, I've still got this cold 3 weeks later. You know, he's going by horse, and when he realizes he's had a thought or broken one of his tantric vows or something, you know. So with practicing Tantra, we're supposed to see the environment as the mandala of the deity, and see all sentient beings as the deity, and hear all sounds as the mantra. So, you know, it's a pretty big ask. Anyway, that's the practice of highest yoga tantra. So, so maybe, and also the other story about Atisha was whenever he saw any other sentient being, even an insect crawling on the ground, he would say, you know, hello, mother. He would recognize even insects as a mother from a previous life, and animals and other people, you know. So he had this, like, you know, perfect bodhicitta. So whenever he noticed he'd broken a vow, he'd immediately stop, get off his horse, and put his stūpa on a rock or a higher place, do 3 prostrations, and do the purification with the 4 opponent powers. So he was famous for doing that. Must have annoyed the hell out of all the people who were traveling with him. He said, "Come on, we've got to get there before nightfall." Anyway, so can you imagine? You're out in a restaurant and you notice you've broken a vow, so you pull out your stūpa and you put it on the table and you do 3 prostrations and do a confession. At this point, they're calling the cops. One time, Lama Yeshe was in London with the Song Rinpoche, Kabji Song Rinpoche, and they were going to dinner in a Chinese restaurant, and Lama was a little bit late, so Song Rinpoche was already in the restaurant. So when Lama came into the restaurant, and Song, it was crowded, people, Saturday night at the Chinese restaurant in London, they're pretty full. So Song Rinpoche was at another table with a few other students and other people. So Lama immediately did 3 prostrations right there on the floor of the restaurant. Everyone kind of looking. We wouldn't do that. Anyway, so anyway, yeah, so delusions of a capability. So that's probably called negative shame, when if you see your guru and you don't prostrate. There's also a story of Naropa. He came into Naropa, his Tilopa's room, his teacher's room, and Tilopa manifested the deity. So he said to Naropa, "Who are you going to prostrate to, me or the deity?" So Naropa thought, "Well, I see Tilopa every day. I don't see the deity every day." So he prostrated to the deity. So Tilopa said, "Wrong. Without the guru, there's no Buddha." So the story is that Naropa didn't attain enlightenment in his lifetime. He attained it in the intermediate state after he died because he prostrated to the deity instead of the guru. Anyway, so procrastinating, not remembering Dharma, but putting the practice off, laziness. So the drawback that you'll practice but not practice properly. So someone like me who's been around for a while, we have a lot of commitments to do, a bunch of different mantras, 21 times or 108 times, whole mala every day. So, sometimes, if you were at Kurukulla when Chöden Rinpoche was there and gave Kurukulla initiation, we have to do 21 mantras. Or when Lama Zopa Rinpoche was there in 2018, he gave Red Tara initiation, and then you make a commitment during initiation. I will do 3 a day, 21 a day, 7 a day. I'll do a mala a day. So then you have this commitment. So you can do them while watching TV. You can do them while you're driving, just to get it out of the way. Or you can sit down in the Vairocana position and do them, with proper motivation, taking refuge, generating bodhicitta. So, so I usually don't do them that way. I usually do them while I'm driving or watching TV, just to get them done. So that's because that's not remembering death. That's practicing, but not practicing properly. And that's, really the fault of attachment, being attached to watching TV or, being attached to spending time meaninglessly, driving here or there, whatever, and just not practicing properly. And then the next drawback, the fourth one, is not practicing seriously. So that's kind of similar to what I'm talking about there, but also that's also sort of practicing intermittently. There's the time you kind of get serious and you're studying, and then you go on vacation, and you don't do your commitments, you don't even do your mantras, even when you're watching TV or whatever sunbaking, whatever you're doing, or then you say, okay, now you go off and you do a meditation course or you do a retreat, you really practice intensively, and then you come back and then you slip back into the old habits, going to work, hanging out with your friends, going to movies, going to the bar, whatever. So not practicing seriously and continuously. So it's like, sweeping a room. You sweep the dirt to one side and then you sweep it to the other side. The room never gets clear. You never get rid of the dirt. So then the fifth is just easily creating negative karma, not being worried about creating negative karma, not being like a teacher, being mindful of being aware of what's going on in your mind all the time. And when you're acting out of ignorance, attachment, aversion, so just, it doesn't matter. I can do this. I'll purify it later. Or, I do my Vajrasattva every night, so I can do this and I'll purify it tonight. Not realizing you could easily die before you get a chance to purify it. So, pretty much here I'm describing my life. So don't be like me. And then the sixth disadvantage of not remembering death is dying with regret. So all of a sudden, death comes. And, you get some terminal diagnosis, or, you don't die just suddenly like a lot of people do. All of a sudden you're alive, and then you have this massive heart attack or stroke and you're dead. So there's no time to have regrets then. But, if you see a death coming, oh God, I had a retreat commitment to do this. I should have studied these books. I didn't meditate enough. I didn't practice generosity enough. I didn't purify my broken precepts properly. I mean, all these different regrets and the memory of time wasted. So time wasted is time lost forever. So then dying with regret, then when we die, our mind continues in the sort of state it's in. So, dying with regret and feeling very negative and down on yourself and critical like that, then your mind continues in that way. So almost certainly it will take you to a lower rebirth. Lama Yeshe always said, the best way to die is with bodhicitta. If we die with bodhicitta, we won't be reborn in the lower realms. But if our mind is overcome with sort of negativity and regret and sort of dark clouds, it's very difficult to remember to practice, to remember your guru, to remember a refuge, and to remember bodhicitta. So these are habits that we have to build up in our life through practicing all the time, every day, so that these thoughts come automatically, especially the thought of bodhicitta, or remembering our guru, another way not to be reborn in the lower realms, or refuge. But if we haven't if the weight of our negative karma is great and the weight of our positive karma is very small, then just on likelihood, it's going to be negative karma that predominates. It automatically comes in our mind when we have less and less control over it. So that's one of the shortcomings of, those are 6 shortcomings, dying with regret. So the advantages of remembering death are the advantage of it being the advantage of being most beneficial. So it will help us. It will make us remember Dharma if we remember death. And we just say the most important thing in my life now that I've had this rare opportunity of meeting and practicing Dharma. This is the best thing I can do. And it's most powerful, and it's remembering. The second advantage is that it makes us remember Dharma in a powerful way, in that we remember to practice purely and continuously and sincerely, and not procrastinate, not do those disadvantages anyway. So then also remembering death is important at the beginning of our practice. So as Milarepa said, what do you say? Through fear of death, I fled to the mountains where I realized the nature of the mind. Now death has no fear for me. So through fear of death, he went and lived his ascetic life, practiced very purely, intensively, and actually attained enlightenment. So he attributed beginning to practice his fear of death. And I'm not going to go to the life of Milarepa, but he'd done all these negative things previously, so he had a lot to fear. Had killed a lot of people and stuff like that. Then it's important in the duration of our practice, so that if our practice flags or we get distracted, to remember death, it brings us back to the point that no, I should be practicing, and it helps us maintain our practice, and it keeps us practicing, as I said, continuously. So it's important at the beginning, and it's important in the middle, and it's important at the end. So a lot of the, especially if we're practicing Tantra, these difficult meditations, visualizing the mandala, and refining our understanding of emptiness, and really putting finishing touches to our practice. And some of these practices are very hard. So by remembering death, and look, I'm nearly there, and I must keep doing this now to attain enlightenment. And so remembering death is useful at the end of our practice as well. And then the sixth advantage then is dying happily and even gladly. So I think it's so the lowest level of practitioner dies without regret. The medium level practitioner dies with confidence that they won't be born in the lower realms. And then the highest level of practitioner looks forward to death. As Rinpoche always said, like going on, looks forward to death like going on a picnic. So, those highest, most accomplished yogis look forward to death like going on a picnic. So they look forward to death because I don't know if I'll get to it now, but they're in the highest yoga tantra sadhanas, there's a part where you meditate on the death process if you're actually meditating on the sadhana, not just reciting it. And I think His Holiness said, I guess he does a bunch of these. He said he practices going through the death process 8 times a day, something like that. So there's a part in the highest yoga tantra practice where you practice, dying, and then being reborn, and then being in the intermediate state, and then being reborn. So the part where you visualize yourself as the seed syllable is the intermediate state. Then when you manifest as the deity, that's kind of rebirth. So you go through this. So there are different meditations you do during that, the death, intermediate state, and rebirth. So if you become very familiar with the process of death, you know that you're going to maybe even attain enlightenment in the intermediate state, or be reborn in a pure land. So there was one Geshe who was a very accomplished practitioner, and he was always meditating in his room. And he had monk attendants and stuff around, and he was always praying to be reborn in hell so that he could help the hell beings escape from the hell realm. So he was, famous for doing this meditation. I mean, he was known by his students and attendants as that was his meditation. So then, finally, he entered the death process. So then he told his attendants that just now I'm entering the final stage of my life, so just let me be, and while I do my final meditation. So he's sitting on his bed meditating, and then one of his attendants was outside the room, heard him saying, "Oh no." So he got worried and he looked in and said, "What's wrong?" He said, "All my life I've been praying to be reborn in the lower realms, but now I'm having a vision of the Pure Land. So, I guess that's the result of actual bodhicitta, being reborn in the Pure Land instead of the lower realms. But then once you're enlightened, then you can go to the lower realms. You can do all kinds of things, apparently." There was another Geshe who was so when they doing their final meditation, sometimes they're sitting on their bed, and then before the attendants leave them, they make offerings on the altar, light, water, and then they would put a cup of really, good Tibetan tea on the Lama's table in front of him, and as their final offering to him before he passes, his consciousness leaves. And as Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, it was really excellent tea with a thick layer of butter on the top, and so he was doing his meditation, and then after a while his attendant looked in, and he still hadn't gone. So no, it was his teacher looked in. His teacher looked in. He realized that he wasn't able to leave his body because he was attached to the Tibetan tea. So the teacher said to him, "There's better butter tea in Tushita." So then he was able to leave his body and go to the Pure Land in search of better butter tea in Tushita. Might have been a trick, I'm not sure. But it worked. I think Gelek Rinpoche told the story that he dressed in his finest brocade donka and really nice shirt and something, and then the Lama couldn't leave because he was attached to his shirt. I don't know how they. I don't know the rest of that story. Anyway, so so if we remember death, and that helps us practice purely and continuously and all the time, and without being attached to worldly things, then we can look forward to death, like going on a picnic. So, having meditated on those disadvantages and advantages. Then there's the actual way to remember death is through the 9-part meditation on death. So there are when we do the nine steps. There are 3 kind of routes, and within each of these 3 routes, there are 3 reasons, which aren't always reasons, but they're 3 points to meditate on. So the first route is thinking about the inevitability of death. You know, that death is certain. So the first thing to meditate on is that death is definitely going to come, and there's nothing we can do to prevent it. So, you know, there's nowhere we can go to avoid death. There's nothing we can think about to prevent death. There's nothing we can eat to prevent death. You know, nobody who's ever been born has escaped death. So you think of all the great spiritual practitioners, the Buddha himself, all the powerful leaders in the world, politicians, military, whatever, kings, emperors, nobody has escaped death. You know, human, animal, nobody in any realm, the 6 realms has escaped death. So of course, you know, I'm going to die. We think, you know. So, you know, intellectually, we always, of course, everyone accepts it that they're going to die, but we don't really feel it, you know. Like Lama Tsongkhapa said, we don't wake up in the morning and think, I'm going to die today. Lama Zopa Rinpoche once said, you know, if you go to a palm reader or a fortune teller, you know, they look at it and say, oh, you know, you're going to live a long life, you know, got a long lifeline, you're going to marry and have children, and your business is going to be successful, you're going to be tell you all this stuff. He said, I would rather prefer, what he said, I'd rather prefer that I was told, oh no, you're going to die tomorrow. That's what I'd rather hear from the palm reader than all this other stuff. That would really kickstart my practice. So then we're thinking how, you know, nothing is being added to our lifespan and it's always being subtracted from. So this is really where the meditation on impermanence comes. So then they have all these examples, you know, of a train rushing to its destination, or you know, a waterfall, or you know, dropping a stone into a well. Just think, or shooting an arrow at a target. With these different visual images of impermanence that we just have to see our life as resembling. So it's not talking about gross impermanence, you know, where, you know, there were all these buildings and then somebody bombed them all and now they're just rubble. That's sort of gross impermanence. Something was there and then it was damaged by some external force and now it doesn't exist anymore. Or whether it's bombs or earthquakes or whatever, But what it's talking about is subtle impermanence, how everything is changing. Our body and our mind are changing in the shortest fraction of a second without pausing for a moment, constantly changing. And that's not because, so our death isn't necessarily, is sort of, we're going towards death. And it's not because of some external factor that's going to cause it. It's because that's the nature of our life. We're born as a product of causes. So anything that is a product of causes is naturally impermanent and constantly changing every moment. So we have to try and feel that our, like the hourglass, that our life is just constantly running out without pausing a fraction of a second. As Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche said, every breath, every heartbeat is a step closer to death. So, we have a certain number of breaths in our life. We have a certain number of heartbeats. Each breath, each heartbeat is bringing us closer to the last one. So if we can really feel that, it'll give us a real sense of urgency to make the most of this, rare and precious opportunity that we have. So then the third meditation, which is not really a reason, but that death is definite, but it's likely to happen before we really get around to practicing Dharma properly. We have all these other things we have to do before we can fully devote ourselves to Dharma. So, after my first meditation course, I don't know exactly how, I can't remember now. It was like 1972 or so, 50 something years ago. One of the main reasons I did that meditation course was because I had to wait for a friend in Kathmandu, and it was cheaper to do the course at Kopan than wait in a hotel in Kathmandu. Although I had a little interest to find out more about Buddhism. And it just happened, the course was starting a few days after I got to Kathmandu, and the guy I was supposed to meet wasn't there. So by the end, I wasn't really convinced, but I knew enough to think that I couldn't leave without finding out more about Dharma. And I remember I did say we had a group photo, which we usually did in those days. Maybe they still do after the Kopan course. We had a group photo, and when everyone was breaking up after the photo, I said to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, thank you, Rinpoche, for changing my life. So I don't remember exactly how I felt, but I remember I said that. But then later I was talking to this Canadian nun who was Rinpoche's assistant at the time, Anila Ann McNeil. So she was sort of the go-between between the students and mainly Lama Zopa Rinpoche. And so I said to her, you know, I think I really want to do Dharma, which meant I really want to put myself into it full time. So I don't know why exactly I was feeling like that. It certainly wasn't fear of death. I don't think it was. I can't remember. And she said, "Oh," so I said, "I really want to do Dharma, but how will I support myself? You know, because I didn't have a lot of money behind me or anything." And she looked at me as if I was a bit simple, and she said, "Oh, if you give yourself to the Dharma, Dharma will always look after you." So I was like, "Okay." So so I don't know really how much I've given myself to the Dharma, but it certainly looked after me. I think, you know, somehow here I'm still here, alive anyway, and you know, with a lot of opportunities to do different things. So so up until that point, I'd never really met anybody that I felt I wanted to be like. You know, I was pretty pleased being myself, and but then when I met Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, it all changed. You know, I said, I mean, they were so amazing. You know, I really wanted to be like them. I really felt that, you know. And so, how did they get to be like they are? They studied and meditated and practiced Dharma, you know. So I kind of figured, well, that's one of the things that led me to becoming a monk. You know, that well, they're monks, so I want to be like them, so I should become a monk. You know, and when I did that, I thought I was entering a life of study, meditation, and teaching. Um, so, and then I thought the best thing I can do, since I'm extremely unaccomplished in Dharma myself, maybe the best thing I can do is to try and make their teachings more available to others. So, because, you know, most of us who are at the course, there are about 50 people, and then as that was the third course at Copan, then the fourth, fifth, sixth, and more people were coming. You know, there are like 50 people at that course, and 120 at the fourth, and 200 at the fifth, and 250 at the sixth, and 250 was more than Copan could handle. And so things sort of fell apart there a bit. And in the end, about 70 people left that course. So then, for one reason or another, one reason it was very uncomfortable, you know, because, you know, the place couldn't handle that many people. So, so then it sort of evened out about 200 people. Even now, I think they're getting around 200 people. Of course, the place can handle probably 400 people now, but anyway, it's about 200 people who've been coming to all these courses now. There's been, what, 52 or 53 or something. So, so that's kind of how I got into editing and publishing and working with the Lama's teachings. Just so that went on for a few years, and then all of a sudden, Lama Yeshe sent me to Delhi to start a center. So, you know, that was kind of the beginning of the end of me becoming like them. You know, running a center is like running a business, which I didn't really have much experience of. Anyway, so So we founded Wisdom Publications at Copan in 75. And then I was in Delhi for 6 years, and then I went to London to take over Wisdom Publications again. And then, we came to Boston in 89, and it was Lama Zopa Rinpoche was here, and then he started the center. And then in 96, I left Wisdom and to start the archive, or to develop the archive. And so somehow that's it's been very external activity, sort of editing and publishing. I'm never really been much of a meditator, and I do my commitments watching TV. And so the only time that somehow that fear of death crept into my practice was in 1974. So in 74, a bunch of us got ordained as monks and nuns, 10 of us, Westerners, and we started the FPMT Sangha organization, the IMI, International Mahayana Institute, Lama Yeshe called it. We started that Lama started it in December 73, and then we went to Bodhgaya for Kala Chapra in 74, and we got ordained. And then we came back to Copan, and we started, I think, one of the first Western monastic communities, Tibetan monastic communities. And so we had, daily practice, and we had our own quarters at Copan and like that. And then in May 74, Lama Yeshe gave the Haruka Vajrasattva initiation. And that summer, a bunch of us did retreat. There was a group retreat at Copan. I think about 20 people did that, mainly lay people. It was led by Anila Ann. And I think 8 or 10 or 12 of us went up in the mountains to do retreat. I did mine at Laudo in a place called Charok Cave. Actually, I just wrote about it. I don't know if you saw that. It's called My Second Trip to Laudo. I wrote about that retreat. And anyway, so Lama Yeshe gave these teachings, which we hurriedly transcribed and printed in this kind of rough manner. It's sort of basically an unedited transcript. Later, I edited this, and Wisdom published a book called Becoming Vajrasattva. And in that book, actually, there are 3 chapters of retreat instructions that you really, if you're ever going to do retreat, you should read Lama Yeshe's retreat instructions. They're really amazing. And some of them came from this. But so when Lama Yeshe would give teachings, he'd sometimes single out one of the students and refer to that person sort of jokingly or sarcastically or positively. I mean, different ways, build them up, break them down. So somehow in this one, I felt he mentioned me a few times, or a couple of times, but he talked a lot about death, about how we're going to die, and somehow when I got into my cave in Laudo, I was reading this, and my interpretation of he's talking about death and mentioning me here and there. I became convinced that he was, in his teaching, he was subliminally telling me that I was going to die in that retreat. So when that occurred to me, I was kind of shocked. because, I mean, I hadn't really taken those teachings seriously. And so where at the cave I was in was about 15-minute walk from the monastery at Laudo. And in those days, the Kopan monks, the Sherpa monks and the Tibetan monks, there were only about 20 or 30 of them, maybe 30 at that time. So in the summer, they would go up to Laudo, to the Laudo Gompa, with Lama Lundup, the teacher. And in the winter, when it was too hard to get food up there, and they'd go back and stay at Kopan. So for 2 or 3 years, they went up in the summer and down until they became too many, and it was impractical to do that. But most of their families were up there, so they'd go up and their families would see their kid and stuff like that. So when this thought came, first of all, I was really annoyed that he knew I was going to die, and he sent me up there where there's no medical treatment. And said if I got sick and I was going to die, at least there was a hospital in Kathmandu, or I'd go back to the West, But up there, I mean, if you start dying up there, that's it. So that was kind of annoying, and irresponsible, I thought. And then I thought, well, but I had enough experience in hospitals to know that even in the best hospitals, people die. So, you get some terrible illness, a lot of people don't recover. So maybe it's better that I died doing purification retreat. So that kind of made sense. But anyway, then I ran over to the monastery, and I said to Lama Lundup, and the lamas, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche had come up at the beginning of the summer to just help the Westerners get settled in retreat. And, there's some in the Gompa, and there's some here, there was some there, we were all over the place. And I was in my cave, and then to get the monks organized. And then the lamas went back, and then they went to the West. They came to America. Those teachings were published in the first wisdom book, Wisdom Energy. And then they went to Australia and founded Chenrezig Institute, which just had its 50th anniversary last year. And so they went down. So I went to Lama Lundup. I said, before Lama Yeshe left, did he give you any instructions about any pujas to do for me when I die? Anything like that. So he laughed, He said, "Oh, you very good understanding Lamrim, And I was like, it's not understanding Lamrim. It's like, it's in the book. I'm going to die. It's here. Look, he said this, he said that. And anyway, he just sent me back. He said, you just go back and do the retreat. So then, just because the puja hadn't been arranged, I wasn't convinced I wasn't going to die. So then when I was meditating, trying to do visualization, and then my mind would wander here, I was able to bring it back. It's like, come on, you're not getting out of here alive, You've got to focus. This is your last chance, So, I mean, it was a complete delusion. It wasn't a realization. It wasn't a deep understanding. It was just like, it was a delusion. I mean, here I am 50 years later. So, but it kind of worked, and it really helped me focus. So then the retreat finished, and then Adela Ann had gone to Australia with the lamas, and they left her there to develop Chenrezig Institute. And so I was Rinpoche's assistant at the 7th course, so I had to come down. Because honestly, the way I felt after 4.5 months in this cave was I wanted to stay there forever. It was like such an incredible experience, I didn't die for a start, and But so I had to come down anyway because I had this job to do at the next course. So as I was going down the mountain back to Lukla to get the flight back to Kathmandu, you know the Innocence Project? Everyone knows. You know, they do the DNA and they get these people off death row through the DNA test. And, you know, after 30, 40 years in prison, they're released. So I felt like one of those guys, you know. I felt like somehow I'd escaped death and I was able to tell the tale. So there was that usefulness. So anyway, thinking about how you'll definitely die before getting around to practice Dharma. That's the third meditation in the first reason. And the second route is thinking about the uncertainty of when you will die. You know, time of death is indefinite. So then the three ways to meditate on that are the lifespan of people from this world, the southern continent, so-called. So, you know, in Tibetan astrology, we do the mandala offering, you know, Mount Meru and in the south, east, west, north, these different continents. So this is supposedly the southern continent, and the face of Mount Meru on the south is lapis lazuli, so that's why our sky is blue. So this is the way it's explained, you know. His Holiness, this is the teachings, you know, but His Holiness always says that if science comes up with reasons that the traditional teachings are wrong, then we need to accept the science, not the traditional things. So I don't think Carl Sagan or anybody ever found Mount Meru. And so the 4 continents and the 8 subcontinents that we do in the mandala, you know, Shalak, Popolo, Zamboing, Dangsha, all that stuff, you know. So I don't know what the exact meaning of that is traditionally, but you know, the Buddha taught that at the time that was people's understanding. So it was a way to help people understand the vastness of the universe, or I don't know. Anyway, the lifespan of people in the southern continent, here where we live, is not fixed, especially so for lifespans during these degenerate times. So, as we know, so there are certain continents, the northern continent and different, where they have a lifespan of 1,000 years, or you know how long your life is going to be up there, and everybody lives that long and then die. So I don't know if that's an advantage or disadvantage, but here, that you can die in the womb, you can die during delivery, you can die in infancy, you can die anytime, as a child, as an adolescent, as a young adult, as middle age, as old, you know, anytime you can die from 0 to 100. So that means we never know when we're going to die. And so that's should be extremely helpful in stimulating us to practice Dharma. Because, you know, if we wake up every morning and think, I'm going to die today, or if the palm reader says you're going to die tomorrow, then that can really focus our attention and really help us understand what life's all about, you know. So the second way to think here about the uncertainty of time of death is when you die is uncertain because there are many factors contributing towards your death and very few towards life. So, you know, even a tiny virus can kill us. A tiny prick with a thorn, you can barely see, you know, get tetanus, you can die. You know, one tiny cell can become malignant and cancer spreads through our body and can kill us. So there are all these minuscule causes of death because our body, so, you know, there are all these, and then, you know, external factors, you know, plane falls out, you know, just the other day, a plane fell out of the sky and hit some guy in a car and killed him. I mean, you know, he wasn't driving his car thinking, I'm going to die now, you know. So, there are earthquakes and there are fires and there are wars. I mean, there are so many factors contributing to the death. And there are very few, even you take medicine can kill you. You take medicine to be healthy and to live longer, and you have a reaction, you die, So, so the time of death is really uncertain. So we need to meditate on, the unfavorability of this environment towards sustained existence. And also the body is extremely fragile, So like I said, well, these tiny factors like a virus or a cell becoming malignant, it just, a body can be easily crushed. So there are so many external factors, roof falls in. Our body is extremely fragile. So again, we can die at any time. So the conclusion of the first three about the time of death being certain is, since I'm going to die, I must practice Dharma. So then we're meditating on the uncertainty of the time of death. Then we have to conclude, not only must I practice Dharma, but I must practice Dharma from now on. If I haven't started immediately, I have to start immediately. If I've already started, I have to just continue. I have to continue my practice. Because I could die today. And then the third route is that what helps at the time of death. So then, our wealth and possessions, our position can't help us. No matter how much wealth we've accumulated, no matter how high we've risen in society, none of that can help at the time of death. And second, even our friends and family can't help us. So we're dying, and all these people around us, don't die, please don't die, holding onto our arms and legs. Not only do they not help, but they actually hinder, because they bring up our attachment and our fear of death and our fear of leaving it all behind, also with our wealth. So, no point being attached to our wealth or position, no point being attached to our family and friends, because at the time of death, that most crucial time of life, what happens at that time determines what's going to happen in all our future lives, especially the next one, obviously. No use being attached to any of that. And then even our precious body can't help us at the time of death. Again, it becomes a hindrance, fear of I'm becoming non-existent. We identify so strongly with our body. You look at a photo, that's me. Somebody steps on our toe in a crowded train. Hey, you stepped on me. We so strongly identify with our body that when we're leaving it, there's terrible fear and attachment, and that, like grasping at straws, that attachment to the body ensures we're going to our mind is not going to be free, it's not going to be liberated, it's going to go into another body. And under the force of attachment, this negative karma that's created by being motivated by attachment will definitely send our mind into a body in the lower realm, as a hell being, as a hungry ghost, or as an animal. So the only thing that helps at the time of death, possessions, family, friends, body, none of that helps. The only thing that helps is the Dharma that we practice. So, the more we practice Dharma, the easier it will be to have thoughts of refuge, of our guru, of bodhicitta, as our mind is leaving our body. So not only must I practice Dharma, not only must I practice Dharma from now on, or right now, but I must practice only Dharma. So those are the three conclusions from this 9-round meditation. Must practice Dharma, practice immediately, and only Dharma. No time for anything else. And there's no time for anything else. Except for the rest of our life. Non-stop practice of Dharma. Okay, kids, well, the party's over. Geshe-la's back next week. So you get some real teachings. And thank you very much for the opportunity. Sure, it hasn't benefited you, but it's benefited me. So
it's been greatly beneficial, Nick. Thank you so much. We really are grateful for your teachings and inspiration, and also we rejoice in all the activities you've done over your very meaningful life. Thank you.
Well, thanks for saying that.
Thank you.
Anyway, if Geshe-la goes away next year, maybe we'll get past verse 12. Who knows? It's 88 to go. Okay, thanks everybody, and I hope to see you again. And take us out, Bob.
Should we do a little dedication?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Quick dedication. Saji Puki Jukching Me Tok Tram, Ri Rabling Jin De Gen Pa De, Sangye Jing Du Mikte Uwagi, Dokun Nam Dak Jing La Cher Pa Shu, Jetsun Lame Kute Rapten Ching, Nam Ka Trin Le Chok Chu Ge Pa Dang, Lo Sang Ten Pe Dren Me Sasungi, Droe Mun Sel Tak Tu Ne Gyur Chik, Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Long life prayer for His Holiness at the bottom of the page. In that snow mountain encircled land, source of every benefit and joy, may Lord Tenzin Gyatso Chenrezig remain in life till samsara's end. Savior of the snowland teachings and transmigratory beings, who extensively clarifies the path that unifies emptiness and compassion, to the lotus in the hand, Lord Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be fulfilled. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjana's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. And let's see. Bottom of the page, the dedication prayer. Through this virtue may I swiftly, having in Guru Buddha state, place each and every sentient being without exception in that state. Precious supreme Bodhi mind, may it where unborn arise and where born never decline, but increase forevermore. Being made sewe ter chen rezig dreamy kempe wampo jumpo yang dupu malu jumze sangwe dag ganche kepe tsugin so kapa lo sandra pe jabla solwa de.